Hi everybody, good morning. This is Jean here. As you can see, I have finished my Bargello top, just the quilt top. I'm going to be doing a tutorial, a proper tutorial on how I made this Bargello quilt. I made it with no pattern. I didn't follow any directions. I just figured it out myself. But I just want to take a few minutes, as I do, and just address something. I've said to you guys before, if you've been following me, which I know quite a lot of you are quite faithful, thank you. Or if some of you are new and have just tuned in here, I talk a lot. I talk an awfully lot, and I always say I get there in the end. Apparently, some people take umbrage at that. They don't love that. And as you know, only 1 or 2 times I've had a bit of a pity party for myself, because it's like, I got really crummy comments. I've gotten several comments over, and I block those people. It's a nice little thing, and I mute them, never to be seen again, because I understand there's nasty people who are just nasty. I've gotten a few comments where I'm thinking, oh, they're right, they're correct. And I just wanted to read a couple of these that I've had over the last few months regarding my tutorials that I've given. Now, you know, I've been chatting with Jen, I've been chatting with Malia, having a good old time, having a laugh, but my actual tutorials, this is what I've gotten, a couple comments. OMG, get to the point. Valid. Absolutely. Another one was, FYI, actual tutorial starts at 6 minutes 37 seconds. Valid point. Another comment, too much repetition, we get it. I don't know if that's too valid a point. And then, who cares about your stories? We want a quilt lesson. And that one, that comment, not the first two. That comment, we want a quilt lesson, I thought, well, you're going to get a quilt lesson. You're getting a quilt lesson, and I'm telling you right now, you're getting a good quilt lesson. I feel, I sound a little bit defensive, because that annoyed me, because I thought, I don't get paid for this. And I take a tremendous, I get paid from YouTube. And the little bit of money I get from YouTube, look it up. I don't get paid an awfully lot to do these tutorials, which I put out on quite a decent rate. I'm a quick sewer, as you know, and I make tons of quilts. So I set up my camera. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I do have a life, other than that, when I joke about and say I don't. I do have a life, and I have a large family, and I have a large home to take care of, and I have my Maxwell. We were down at St. Christopher's Hospital the other day for an EEG. He has to have an MRI in 2 weeks. So I have other things on my plate other than teaching a quilt lesson. So when I do teach a quilt lesson or have a tutorial, it's in my style. And I know 99 and 9.10 of you love my style. But the ones that don't, if you're watching this tutorial, then I've said it, and I'm saying it a little bit with an attitude today, stop watching me. Because as I was making this quilt, a design it yourself, an incredibly easy way to make a Bargello quilt, which is an easy quilt but doesn't look easy. And a lot of people are intimidated by it, as I was. As I was watching my video and editing it, taking hours and hours and hours, because it's just me editing it, my video, I repeat myself. I repeat myself, I repeat myself, I repeat myself, an awfully lot. But I was listening to it through someone else's ears, and I thought, am I getting annoyed at that? Well, no, I wasn't, because I'm putting myself in a beginner's shoes. And a beginner, if I'm in a classroom, if you were paying $100 an hour to have me teach you in a beginner's classroom, I would be saying, okay, Sally, okay, Johnny, I want you to put this stitch, I want you to stitch here. I want you to go there. No, 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 I want you to do this way. Let's do it this. And I will repeat, and I will repeat, and I will repeat as a teacher to a beginner what to do. And apparently people take umbrage at that. They don't like that. They want me to shut up. And I just was like, I don't know, is this worth it? Like, I was just so fed up. I'm thinking, you know, I do this. I'm not patting myself on the back, but yeah, I think I am. I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart because I enjoy it, because there's people who value me. And then I get like, who cares about your stories? Well, you guys do. And the ones that don't, I know, they're horrible people. But my tutorials, I thought, well, so what that my tutorial starts at 6 minutes 37. This tutorial will start maybe at 20 minutes. And you hear me talking about this and how I came to this. Not like, oh, here's a quilt and we're going to work on this block and you're going to do this. And 6.5 minutes later, you have a quilt made. That's not my style. This tutorial, I don't know yet because I haven't edited it yet, will maybe take 3 or 4 videos parts because it may be an hour and a half, 2 hours that I videoed. But like to get from nothing to this for a beginner, that's my point. You can make this quilt, whether you like it or not. And it was funny. Now I will talk about my Bargello quilt. Enough of that. Enough of having a pity party. This is my Bargello quilt. I've never made one. I never wanted to make one, as you know. And a lot of people commented and said, well, don't make one. And I'm like, I think I want to. But what was happening is I was going to, I did all my due diligence on YouTube and a lot of blogs on making a Bargello quilt. And there's the traditional method of making a Bargello quilt. Now that traditional method includes, for this easy, quote, beginner quilt, some of those, not all, I'm sure there's many more, include detailed patterns, precise labeling, specific diagrams, very defined charts, numbering sequences, strict cutting instructions, referencing numbers, making sure of odd and even strips, keeping ordered segments, tracking your loops, your seam ripping sections, being careful, numbering your strips, sometimes flipping strips 180 degrees, counting up and down, counting carefully, removing certain strips, and the list goes on. For this is an easy quilt. Now at the end of the day, let me tell you, this is an easy quilt. Because that's the traditional way. You know what my way was? My way was, I sewed a bunch of strips together and I subcut them into various widths. And I staggered them. And I made my own design. So if you attempt to make this quilt according to my very lengthy, very repetitive, very mind-bogglingly boring instructions, you can make this quilt however you want to make your quilt. You can design your own Bargello. And my tutorials, you know, however many they are following this, when I go to edit it, which will take me hours and hours, will show you how you can make your own Bargello. The most important things that I want to discuss now, and I suppose this is just the introduction to my Bargello, because I'm nattering on, are the fabric choices, your fabric choices. Now my Bargello quilt, as you see, is very predictable. It's very jean, right? If you've been following me, this is very jean. It's pink and green, and Malia and Jen always bust on me. I'm so predictable. I get it. I love it. It's pink and green and florally, and it's pretty. Well, most Bargellos, if you go online, just Google Bargello, and you will see mostly the Bargellos are these striking wave, braided looking ombre, flame, incredibly twisty, 1 or 2 striking colors of quilt. Constructed pretty much the same way, but the effect is incredible. So if you go online and you see that, you understand that maybe the general concept for Bargello is you get a lighter color and you take all your strips and you go down to a darker color, however many strips. When you want to do 1 to 20, which this is, 1 to 15, which you can do, you can change your quilt up to make it absolutely your own if you're not following a pattern, which I could not wrap my head around it. I have a bit of ADD, and I'm looking at these charts and I'm like, I can't do that. I've been saying that for years now. I can't make a Bargello. I made a Bargello, and it was not hard. So I also, the most important thing that I discovered when I was making my own Bargello quilt was not the 10 million seams. That is what throws people off. Oh my word, how do I make all of those seams? What? I have to pin every single one of these stinking seams? Nope, you don't have to. If you want to, you can. But I show you the most important part of a Bargello is cutting your strips or having your strips cut perfectly and sewing them perfectly at 1/4 of an inch, which I'm sure a little bit more of an advanced beginner can do, or a confident beginner can make their, if you've perfected your 1/4 inch seam, and ironing. That is the most important thing. So matching all these seams, it's not. And do all my seams match absolutely perfectly? Absolutely not. Maybe if I had pinned every single solitary seam, but I didn't find that necessary. And if it's a hair off, if it's 2 threads off, oh my word, oh my word. But the sewing the 1/4 inch seam and the ironing your strips. All this is sewing strips together and subcutting them and putting them back together. That's what a Bargello is. I have nothing against organization. I have nothing against labeling. But the way I did it, I was just very, very careful. And as I say in my tutorials to come, as I say, I don't have a cat, I don't have little kids running around in my sewing room. So when I put something down to the side, it's going to stay there. Perhaps if you have to have your things on your dining room table, you'll want to label this certain sequence that I'm showing you, so as not to get it out of order. I didn't find that. I just laid one strip on top of the other and then flipped it over and sewed them, as you will see. Now, this quilt in particular is made in 4 sections. It's made in the top left, the top right, the bottom left, the bottom right. You sew the top of this quilt to this point here. That's the top. Then you attach at a seam the bottom. And everything is in specific order. And I show you, though, how not to make your eyes crazy following a chart and clicking off and whatever. I have nothing against the traditional method. This is how I had to construct my Bargello. And I show you that you don't have to construct this pattern. You can construct any way you want. You can cut your strips. Well, how do I keep them? I show you how I did that. How do I keep them straight? How do I keep them organized? Because your top half of your Bargello and your bottom half of your Bargello are identical. How do I do that? I show you how to do that in my rather lengthy tutorial. Very important, stay stitching along your one edge, because you're going to be messing, you're going to be taking this over to your ironing board a lot. That's another thing that I think is the success. This is just a quilt top, but even the quilt top is laying beautifully. The success is I've never had to work out as much as I have had this quilt. I was up, I was up here, I sew here, as you know, my ironing board is there, but I was designing it over there. So I would design it, I would cut, I would design, I would stitch, I would iron. I would cut, I would design, I would stitch, I would iron. Very, very important. I use a squirt bottle. I squirted every single one of these seams and pressed them. The only thing that I would have done different, and it really didn't make a big difference when it came to it, was, and I hope you perhaps take the time to watch all of these videos put together, these seams are pressed all the same way on the top. I should, and then I pressed all the seams the exact same way. I could have after the fact, but I wasn't about to go back and re-iron it. Of course, I should have pressed all the seams one way on the top as I was constructing it, and then when I came to construct the bottom, press these seams all this way, because it's just this seam that you're putting your center seam. I could have nested those seams better. These would have gone that way. All these seams, because that's the only thing you actually have to match, your center thing. That I did pin. This wherever it is, this center seam that you have to sew both halves together. So that's the only thing, and I don't think I mentioned that because it was after the fact that I had made the bottom. So if you're going to watch this tutorial, if you're going to take the time, a lot of people won't, and watch my tutorial, you'll see to achieve this effect. But I messed about with it and it was fine. So color choices also. I made this with fabric. I cut my own strips. You can make a Bargello with strip sets, with jelly rolls, of course. Quite a lot of the instructions that I had seen is to make it with one jelly roll. Well, that makes a small quilt. Obviously, the more seams you have in a quilt, the more fabric you're going to use. I started out, this quilt measures 60 by about 79 inches. A decent sized quilt. I thought it was going to be bigger because I started out with 80 2.5-inch strips. I show you. I cut from 20 different fabrics. I cut 4 2.5-inch strips from each 20 different fabrics. From this is my seam. This is the center seam here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. From 20 different fabrics, I cut 4 2.5-inch strips. So people will say, well, how much fabric do I need? Well, for fabric, if you're cutting your own, to err on the cautious side, 4 2.5-inch strips is 10 inches of fabric. So get a third of a yard, 12 inches, to allow for straightening up your fabric and neatening the edges. So 20 fabrics for this look, a third of a yard. A third of a yard? What's a third of a third of a yard? 12 inches. 12 inches of fabric. 20 different fabrics. If you want this look, this makes up this size. Now, if I wanted to make this bigger as I was going along, because I had so many seams and it was shrinking down to size, I would have made it. I would have cut 100 strips. I had as you will see, I had 4 strip sets. Very easy. This is not, I'm not talking Greek. I just had 4 strip sets because I constructed this side and then I added that side with the next strip set. I constructed this side and I added that side. It's very, very simple. Had I had, and that was my 80. That was my 80 strips. Had I had 100 strips, I had 4 strip sets with 80. I would have had 5 strip sets with 100 strips. Okay? I mean, yeah, I would have had 5 strip sets with my individual 100 strips. I would have cut that in half. So I would have had 90 on the top and 90 on the bottom. I hope that makes sense to you. Yeah, I would have had I would have used 2.5 strip sets for the top and 2.5 strip sets for the bottom. You'll see as I go along. I'm making it, maybe I am making it more complicated. Maybe I am nattering on. But I just want to tell you again before this clicks off, and this will be the end of this video. This is the introduction. This is the introduction, and then I'll put up my other videos, my actual tutorials. I had about a year ago made a fast and easy table runner, and on my master YouTube channel workplace where I do my editing and everything, it comes up that I can see comments from every video I've ever made, and this video, my fast and easy table runner, I get a comment almost every day. maybe every other day, that because it's 10 minutes long, I break it down, I repeat myself, and I've had many comments saying, oh, thank you so much for that tutorial. And it's funny because at the end of that tutorial, I talk about, I think it's 1 or 2 times I've said about some nasty comments. People are real kind. They're like, thank you so much for the tutorial. Forget about nasty people, which is real kind. But my greatest compliment in doing this whole thing here was my older brother, Donald. Maybe I mentioned this a year ago, but Donald was watching my tutorials, and we saw him at a family get-together, and he said, hey, Jean, how you doing? He said, I got to tell you, he goes, in all seriousness, and this is an electrical engineer. He says, he goes, I was watching that tutorial on your Fast and Easy table runner. He goes, you know something? I could make that. And I was so like, oh, that like makes this all worthwhile. Like a person who doesn't even sew, who doesn't even own a sewing machine, he's saying to me, your tutorial made a lot of sense. Even cutting through all my verbal garbage, it made a lot of sense to him. And he's like, I could make that. And that's the general consensus of lovely people who don't mind me and who learn something. I'm not the greatest quilter in the world. I do what I do. I like what I do and what I do, and I do things a little bit my way, and this thing is, I didn't follow instructions. I said, forget that. I'm visual. I'm a very visual person. I just looked at pictures and thought, I can do that, and I did it. And you can too. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this very easy quilt. Don't let it intimidate you. The most important thing, though, is your color choices. That's the most important thing, which I go into depth with. So by all means, this quilt would have taken 2 jelly rolls. However, you want the colors to coordinate from either, I have in this quilt black, white, green, and pink. Do you see that? I have blacks, whites, greens, and pinks. So I have just 4 colors, if you can see that. If you want from pale peach down to dark rust, you want that sequence, and you need to figure that out. Now, this is, I'm gonna end it fairly soon, but this is a basic Bargello quilt. This is a very basic Bargello. The ones that like twist and turn and have braids, and I'm looking and I still can't get my visual brain around them. That is, maybe I could if I actually really deciphered it, which maybe I do because I enjoyed making this. I very much enjoyed making this. But this is just basic. This is basic, starting out and making your own little strips and staggering them. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're making a strip set, you're cutting different widths, you're staggering them. So you can go up, you can go down. If I wanted to make like a swag, I would have gone up and down to here. Then I would have gone up and down to there. Then I would have gone up and down to there. And then I would have gone up and down. You see that? And made that swag. And then if you do one, then it just repeats. So maybe I could have gotten 4 swags doing that. You're just going up, you're going down. That's it. So you can make, or you can make your own pattern. That's the whole thing. This is a design it yourself Bargello quilt. So before I'm gonna end soon, but before I do that, I just wanted to show you that this wasn't the first Bargello I made. I was, as I was attempting to try to figure the Bargello out, I have some jelly rolls. And the jelly roll I pulled, thinking, oh, people use jelly rolls, right? The jelly roll I pulled had 40 or 42, I forget, 40 strips, all different colors. They were all different polka little tiny dot fabrics. And so I thought, oh, well, that will be pretty. So I used 20 of them. And I came up with this just to see if I could construct a Bargello and what it was all about. And so this was a half a jelly roll, 20 strips for the body, and then another bit of 9-inch fabric, which I added, which I'll show you, and then I just subcut the border. You'll see it. But it didn't really work out. I want to show you. This is a Bargello that is pretty. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, it's pretty. But it's more of a scrappy Bargello, right? It's more scrappy. And I didn't love it. But it gave me the opportunity to actually practice the construction method. It's very pretty, and I'm going to finish this, and I'll throw it up in my shop. This is nice. I did it like a little black and white dot. And then what I had done is I was experimenting with different size strips. So you're not limited to a 2.5-inch strip. This was a jelly roll. These are 2.5-inch strips. But then I thought, well, what if I added another big strip? So this strip was about 8 inches, 8 or 9 inches, the white. But it doesn't matter, because when you go to stagger the seams, those seams get staggered in the exact same sequence. So if you see that white coming up and down, that was staggered in the exact same way as the other strips were. So as long as you're sewing your strips together and then staggering them, just one up and one down and one up and one down, it doesn't matter. You can make all different size strips. You don't have to have, the same exact size strip, which I think was very interesting. Because as you see, I did 2.5-inch strips and then an 8-inch strip, and then back down. So there's just my prototype, which I like. It's pretty. And Malia likes it. She's like, oh, it's really pretty. But it wasn't that ombre effect, that going from light to dark and then back down to light and dark. This was more of a scrappy, which I quite like. But I'm glad I did that, because it just gave me an opportunity to figure out the construction method. Anyway, that's that. I'm going to finish now. I'm going to go edit this. I'm going to quilt my quilt here. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to bind it. I'm not going to put any borders on it. Although you could, to make this bigger, I could have put a border on it. I could have maybe chosen this black floral, put a small inner border, and put a big 5 or 6-inch border, made it a bigger quilt. But a lot of the Bargellos just are that striking design with a binding, and I have to figure out what binding I'm going to do. I'm so proud of my construction, my seams. As I said, if you're going to attempt it, iron one way and iron the other way. And that, I'm trying to figure out, I think it's right here. This seam here would have nested perhaps just a little bit better. But can you see it? It's awesome. So anyway, oh, and this is the size of this is the size of 20 strips. This is 20 strips. And then the rest of the strips, I just cut the strip set and put this border on. So that's the size of a quilt with an added borders that you can make from a jelly roll, which is a decent sized little lap quilt or a large toddler quilt or something like that. So anyway, that's my Bargello introduction to my Bargello. I really want to thank you people for listening. As I've said before, I appreciate my fans. I appreciate the people who subscribe. Yeah, so I'm going to go and edit this and do however many tutorials so you can make your own Bargello quilt. Okay, thanks folks. Thanks so much. See ya.